is a story that seems absolutely unbelievable. Belle Gibson, no relation to Josie, a 20-year-old mother from Melbourne was tragically diagnosed with terminal brain cancer and given 4 months to live. But against all the odds, through adopting a wellness diet, she somehow managed to cure it.
Yeah. Her miraculous story gained her thousands of followers online, along with a lot of fame and a lot of money.
However, things did take a bit of a turn when journalists began to investigate and they discovered the shocking truth that, in fact, it was all a scam. Belle had never had cancer.
Now, as a new itvx documentary, In Search of Instagram's Worst Con Artist, aims to dig into Belle's story, we're joined by her former friend, Chanel McAuliffe, who's live in Australia, and forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Soham Daz. So, welcome to This Morning. This story is absolutely unbelievable. When we were talking about it this morning, I can't believe how far people go with the lies. Now, you were her friend, weren't you? And you're live in Australia. You went to school with Belle, didn't you?
No, we actually didn't go to school together. I was actually doing a writing internship at the time and was assigned to do a story on her. And then it turned out we had some mutual friends and we... a friendship formed.
So a friendship formed between the pair of you, and obviously Belle said this tragic news that she had terminal cancer. Now, we were talking about this earlier. When someone says that to you, you've got no reason to disbelieve someone would ever say that. So how did she act? Because a lot of people around her are obviously very concerned about her welfare, but there was a few times that you sat there and went, something's not right here.
Yes, Belle was very convincing in her conviction of being sick and having an illness. And in fact, it's featured a lot throughout the documentary how she would actually take on other people's symptoms. She would meet other people that actually had cancer and would take on their symptoms and kind of use them as her own. But things just started to not add up for me. There was a few things that happened, like excessive drinking of alcohol, going to a solarium and tanning. Like, obviously, skin cancer is a really big issue here in Australia. So those things didn't really make sense to me. I had a family friend who passed away of cancer, and I had witnessed their journey with it. So I was kind of aware of someone who is actually very sick of cancer and what that looks like. And they get to the point where they're very frail and bedridden. And Belle was never presented those kind of symptoms. She was always very active, very well, kind of thriving, running a business empire.
And Chanel, what was Belle like? What was Belle like on Instagram? What was she doing on Instagram to all her fans and her new followers?
Yes, she was presenting this wellness lifestyle, the Whole Pantry. She was posting wellness recipes. She at times would give nutrition advice. She very much portrayed an image of wellness and healthy living.
One thing that really struck me is when I was reading about this story, and I know it's all in the doc, you had enough suspicion to call her out on this and actually try and find out what was going on. You went round to her house unannounced. What was said when you saw her?
Yeah, that's right. I went over to her house and essentially confronted her. I just straight out said to her, "Do you have cancer? Can you provide any scans, any medical evidence that shows that you have cancer?" She stated that she didn't like to keep that sort of documentation in her home. And she had just announced that her brain cancer had now spread into her body, into her liver, her spleen, her uterus. It was now stage 4. So it was very grave. It was essentially a death sentence. So I said to her where I wanted to know where she got that diagnosis, at what major Melbourne hospital. She said it wasn't at a hospital. It was through a doctor out in the suburbs at his home practice. I said, what was the doctor's name? And she said it was Dr. Phil, which was kind of quite comical at the time. So, yeah, the more she spoke, it just kind of confirmed, you know, my suspicion. And, yeah, there was nothing that she could come to the table with to make me believe that, that she, in fact, had cancer.
And Chanel, when you met her at the door and you confronted her, which was very brave, because it's a big thing to do, to call somebody out on their lies, especially these sorts of lies. What was her reaction like? Did she become really defensive, or was she cool as a cucumber?
Belle was extremely defensive. She stated that I was interrogating her. I was actually very calm when I was speaking to her. I definitely was quite firm, and I really wanted answers, and I kind of demanded answers, but I was very calm, still quite respectful. She was caught very off guard. She was defensive, and throughout the conversation, she then started to say that she felt very sick. She kind of started to slump in her chair, was almost starting to act like she was passing out, but I had kind of seen her do things like that before, and so I knew that she was pretending, and I knew that she was just kind of cracking under pressure.
Well, Chanel, we know...
So I knew I was probably... Yeah.
We know in the documentary, spoiler alert, but we know that she was lying. It does unravel, and it took you quite a lot of time. You'd spoken to the police, you'd spoken to journalists, you'd spoken to a lot of people about this, and finally a journalist got on board with this, and you did manage to find out that she was lying and prove that she was lying. What was the reaction from her followers? Because she had gained such a big following. She said she was donating money to charities from sales of books and things like that. What did people think of this woman?
Initially, her followers were very loyal. She had built quite a big community. So initially, her followers came to her defence and, you know, were saying that the journalists had got it wrong. Outside of her immediate followers and her community, the general public, which at this point it had started to be global news, there was, a huge kind of backlash against Belle. The general consensus was disappointment and shock, and I think the general public had realised what a dangerous message she was spreading with her misinformation, and it was a dangerous message. She was influencing a very vulnerable group of people that were potentially making life or death decisions based on her story.
It's absolutely disgusting.
Thank you, Chanel. Dr. Daz, why would anyone pretend they were sick? Do you think she was a pathological liar?
So, first of all, thank you for having me on the show.
Pleasure.
I think with Belle Gibson, there's a number of different motivating factors. So, absolutely, some of it was simply for the attention. Some of it was for the social media following. So she got thousands of extra followers on Instagram. Some of it was financial, I believe. You know, she took all these donations and said that she was going to donate them to charity. So she's quite atypical for what you might expect for a typical scammer because she has so many different motivations. To answer your question about whether I think she's a pathological liar, no. The reason being is because pathological liars, the whole motivation is the process of lying. So it's not to gain any kind of specific benefit. And also, they're really compulsive, hence the term compulsive liar. They can't control it. Whereas it sounds like Belle Gibson was much more calculated.
She seemed very in control of what she was doing.
Absolutely, and she changed the story when she was being challenged, as we heard from Chanel, which to me doesn't sound like a pathological liar.
We've spoken before on this show, actually, about Munchhausen's, where you actually believe that you are sick, it makes you sick, and you live your life like that. You don't think this was a case of that? No,
I think there's a bit of an overlap. So obviously she was trying to get some sympathy and empathy from people by pretending to be ill, but the key difference is this, is that in Munchausen's, it's being the patient role. It's being looked after by doctors, by nurses. It's, you know, going doctor shopping. It's faking test results.
Yeah.
She didn't really do all of that. To me, it seems more like fraud.
Yeah, people just believe
And
it.
it also shows us that we need to be very, very careful about who we're following online.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's so many influencers nowadays who like to portray a narrative, portray an image of being rich and successful. So sometimes it snowballs, I think, out of their own control, and they feel like they have to do anything to uphold this image.
Well, we don't want to show or say too much more because obviously it's all available in the documentary, but we do want to show you this quick clip. This is a clip of Belle after she had been found out. Make of it what you will. Take a look.
Would you accept that you're a pathological liar?
No.
Do you take responsibility for driving any people away from conventional medicine in seeking treatment for their cancer?
That would be really heartbreaking to me because I never intended on doing that.
Actually, how old are you?
I've always been raised as being currently a 26-year-old.
This is a really, really simple question. How old are you?
I believe that I'm 26.
And?
I have two birth certificates and I've had my name changed 4 times.
What do you know the truth to be now?
That's probably a question that we'll have to keep digging for.
Well, I think it's fair to say you need to look at that documentary.
Definitely.
Which is going to be available on ITVX. It's a fascinating story. 𝐸𝐸, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the doc as well. Thank you for joining us from Australia. And Dr. Daz, once again, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you.